Ezra Hashem. Today's daf is Masechta Menachos Daf Chav Dalid, and we're going to start from the bottom of Chav Gimel Amud Beis. Okay, here we go. It's like the last, second to the last line of Chav Gimel Amud Beis. Very straightforward Gemara. Kisolik Rav Kahana. When Rav Kahana went to Bavel, okay, when Rav Kahana visited Bavel, Ashkechinu lebnei Kisolik Rav Kahana, when Kahana went up to Israel, Askechinu lebnei Rab Chia, he found the sons of Rab Chia, whose names were Yehuda and Chizkiah, and the Yasveh Ka'amu. And Rav Kahana visited Israel from Bavel, so they grabbed him and started asking him questions. And here's the questions we never even thought about. You know, you need an isaron of flour, right? And a certain measurement of flour. So the question was, isaron shechilku, they took an isaron and they divided it up into two parts. Ve'nichoi bebisa, and they put it into a klisharis. So let's see our first picture of the day. Very simple picture. The picture goes like this. You have a klisharis, this pan, and you have two piles of flour. Together, if you combine them together, they are the shear of isaron of flour for a mincha. But he put it in two separate piles into the klisharis. Does the klisharis combine them such that if a tameh would touch one side flour, automatically the other one is tameh? You see, even though they're not touching each other, but because they're in the same holy pan, so therefore, if a tameh would touch one side, the other side will become tameh. That's the question. Because we do see this concept by, let's say you have in this pan, you have, let's say in a klishares, you have arbus, okay, holy arbus. So if you touch one, if the tameh touches one, everyone is tameh. Even though you don't say one, only two are tameh, everything is tameh because the klishares combines everything. So the question was, here, they're all touching each other. But in this klisharis, they're not touching each other. Do you say they combine? That's the question. We go back into the Gemara, and a tameh touch one pile. Mahu, what would be the din? So the Gemara asks, Kitnan, when did we learn kli mitzaref that a kli can combine everything that's inside of it when it comes to Dvarim shel kedusha, Hanamil, that would be said, Heicha denagu bahadadi, if they're touching each other. Aval hacha over here, Heicha de loy nagi bahadadi, loy. Or in our case, where they're not touching each other, we wouldn't say that the klisharis is combined. And therefore, if the tameh touched one, the other pile will not become tameh. Or maybe it doesn't make a difference. So Rav Kahana responded, Mitnan, does the Mishnah say kli mechaber, that a keli connects? Connects means that it puts it all together as one unit. Kli mitzarev tanan. It says in the Mishnah that a kli, a holy vessel, will combine everything. Kaldehu, no matter what, even if you're touching or not touching, kli mitzarev. So there's your answer. You have two piles in a pan. A tameh touches one of them, automatically the second one becomes tameh. That leads us to the next question: is that a din d'oraisa or din d'rabbanan? What's the daf gemina? Maybe you only machmir when a tameh touches one of them, the other side becomes tameh. But would you say if you do kamitza from one pile, is that enough of a kamitza to be yotze the second pile? Because kamitza is a d'oraisa, and this whole thing that we actually think that a keli combines everything inside of it, because there's a pasuk that says kaf achas. There's one spoon. So why does it say one spoon? The pasuk, anything in a vessel, in a spoon, is considered like one. So that leads us to the next question. First of all, before it leads us to the next question, I'll say two more questions. First, hoishid echad b'neihem mahu. The first question that he asked, before we get to that question, is what happens if you put another pile in between? In other words, you made three piles, okay? Like here, an unnecessary pile. Because here, one side you have a half a isaron, then you Then you put the other side of the pan another half the isarin, as you can see in the picture. And the middle, you just added a half isarin, but that cannot be part of the mincha. The mincha is only a sarin. So would you say that if a tummy touches the middle one, the outer two are tummy? Certainly, if it touches the middle, if the outer one, then the other outer one is tummy. But what about the middle one? So that's the question. So the Gemara says, if you put another pile in between, an extra pile, if it's supposed to be in the vessel, then the vessel combines it. If it's not supposed to be there, if it's extra, it's not part of the group. And therefore, if a tummy touches the middle one, the rest are not tummy. Let's say you have, again, the picture is you just have two. And the guy, the Tful Yoim, didn't touch any pile. He just put his finger. Just the fact that the finger is in the airspace of the keli, does that make both of them tame? So the Gemara says no. Rabbi Kana answered that only time a tame can mitama just by sticking your finger into an airspace, only if he goes into an earthenware keli. But a kli sharish generally was made out of metal, and therefore it doesn't become tame just by sticking your finger in the airspace. Now comes the question which I alluded to before: is it a din daraisa d'rabbanan? So they further asked the question for Rav Kahana: Mahu likmaitz mizalzeh? Can you do a kamitza from one pile on the other pile? Tzerev daraisa is combining. Is this din a din daraisa, and therefore a kamitza would work? If you do kamitza on just one pile, it works for the other pile. Or d'rabbanan, maybe it was just a chumrah d'rabbanan. This is not so easy to answer. Amru lai, so he said to them, Zulai Shemani, I'm not sure. But Kayotze by Shemani, I heard something that could be a raya. Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, Shnei Menachos Leinik Mitzuv and Arvuzu Bezu. You have two menachos, two bowls of menachos, okay, that they did not do the kamitza. So let's imagine two bowls of menachos. Prior to doing the kamitza, here's a bowl, and imagine another bowl, just like this one, okay? And im yochel likmoitz mezu b'fnei atzmei umezu b'fnei atzmei kisheres v'imla pesulos. So the Gemara is learning now that what's the situation? You have a little bit from each. Let's see if I have a picture over here. Hold on. Oh, you have a little bit of each. So what you generally have is a kamitza on one side, a kamitza of another mincha on the other side, and in between you have a pile that's mixed from both. And that's why if you could take the kamitza from one side, take the kamitza from the other side, and that makes it kosher. But the middle one is not connected. So, and we said that it would be kosher. But if vimlav, if they're totally mixed up with each other, two minchas that got mixed up before you took the kamitza, then it's pesulas. But kiyachol likmaitz miya kasheris. But if there is something that's defined, that's not mixed up, a kamitza part of each is not mixed up, then it would be kosher. Again, you have two minchas that got mixed up, but they didn't totally get mixed up. You have a kamitza of a handful of flour from one mincha on one side, a handful of flour of mincha of another mincha on the other side, and in between, not touching each kamitza, is the mixture of two minchas. The question is, why is it kosher? Hachtam arav halay nagab. The part that's mixed up is not touching any mincha. So why is that kosher? Well, it's not touching any kamitza. So it must be that the keli that they're inside combines them all. Amarava says, who says so? Dilma begusha machlaka. Maybe they are connected inside. In other words, you have a kamitza. Connected to that kamitza is a pile of mixed minchas, and then next to that pile is a mixture, is a kamitza from another mincha, separate, but they're all touching each other. So again, Gemara doesn't know, do we have a raya? So my havala, what is the bottom line? Back to the question. Question is, can I do kamitza on these two piles? Can I do kamitza on one, and it will automatically be yaitza the other? So the Gemara says, Amarava Tashma. Rava says, I have a proof. Tanya, we learned in the Brayso, the Heirim Menu Min Amachuba. It says in the Torah, you have to make a kamitza when it's connected. So you can't have a isarin in two different kalim. You can't have one pile, half a isarin in one vessel, and a half a isarin in another vessel, and take a kamitza from one vessel. If they're in two different vessels, it's no good. So we can infer from the brisa, but if they were in one vessel, similar to shnei kalim. In other words, what makes two kalims, two vessels, is because they're not touching each other. The two halves are not touching each other. So, but it's mashma that, and you could infer that if they were in the same keli, although they're not touching each other, kamitza would work. So that's a proof that it could work. Amalei Abai is not so fast. Maybe when the Bryce is talking about two kalim, it's like this. It's actually in one keli, and kain kavisa bakaba. Like there's a small keli, there's like a compartment that divides a keli into a small part and to a big part. And the Bryce is telling you that's considered like two kalim, even though they're in one kalim. The afagav, they're rivim alloy, even though when you overflow and you heap up, they're connected. Even the mitzvah the kavisa mitata, since they have a division going up through the length of the keli, they're considered like two kalim. So, like say, take a look at this picture. You have what basically you have here. I make it bigger on this side. You have a small part with one with half a isarin and another part and a half isarin, all in one keli, and they combine on the top. So that's no good because they're divided by a division, a divider within the keli. But if the divider in the keli does not go all the way to the top, if it just goes halfway and within the keli they're connected, that's good enough. And that's what the Bryce is talking about. But they must be connected because there's certain kalim that are made that way. You put water on one side and food on the other side, and somehow if you fill it up further, they connect on the top, like you see in the picture. But if they're totally disconnected, like this, maybe the Bryce would agree. If they're totally disconnected like this, then it's not going to work. So we're not going to have a proof. What's one keli that's like two kalim? That's good. Like the pot belonging to a chicken that you put bird feed on one side and water on the other side, and you can fill it to the top. Even though they're divided by a divider, but they touch on the top within the keli itself. But in our case, that if they're not touching at all, I have a question. Does kamitza work from one side to the other side? So the Gemara doesn't resolve that. Now the Gemara asks two more questions regarding this matter. We already said, okay, let's get the picture and then we could just go straight to it. We already said that if a tamei touches one side, the other side becomes tamei. What happens if you have a hose pouring water that touches one side and the water goes out the wall and touches another pile of flour that's outside the keli? So we're going to say the tamei touches one side, automatically the other half of the isarin becomes tamei. And now this water connects the outside. So then would you say that third pile becomes tamei? And even if you do say that third pile becomes tamei because the tamei touched something on the inside and the water connects the second pile to the third pile, would you say in the opposite case, what happens if the tamei touched the outer pile, but somehow it's connected via water pouring into the inside, and that will be tamei the first pile going backwards? Would you say that way? So this is the Gemara is going to remain as a question. Rav had this question. You have a combination of two piles in a vessel and a third pile outside the vessel, which is connected to the inner vessel via a connection of water. Mahu. When do you say a keli combines everything? Only the stuff, the piles that are inside the keli. If there's a pile outside the keli, not so. Dilma kaved the michaber, but maybe the pile that's outside the keli is connected via water, a water that flows directly over the inside onto the outside. So maybe that's considered as if it connects the pile that's on the outside to the piles that are inside. The imtim salemi, even if you want to say keep the mechaba that it is a connection, that's only because the tummy touched the tum on the inside. Let's say the tful yom touched the pile that's on the outside. Would you say that the piles that are inside are tame? When do you say a combination combines two separate piles in a keli is only if the tummy touched the pile from the inside of the keli. But if the tummy touches the keli from the outside, light, we won't say. So that's the question. If the tummy, as you can see in the picture, touched the outer pile, and would you say that now the inner piles become tame, even the one to the other end of the keli, which is not touching the other pile, because the kli combines everything inside of it. So the Gemara leaves that as a taken. We go on to the next Gemara. Rava asked the question. Isarin shechilku, you divided up the piles. Okay, that's so good. So far, so good. And then one of them, before you put it into a kli shares, you tama it. Tama one pile. Then venicha bekisa. Then you put it into the vessel. So now you put what you did put into the vessel, into the two vessel, is two piles, but one of them became tame before you entered into the vessel. So it's already tame. So the other side should not become tame. But what happens? The chaza tvul yom v'nagabayse tame. A tvul yom touched the tame pile, so he touched it for the second time. Mao. So since he touched it for the second time, while it's in the klishares, because the second time it's in the klishares, mi amrina savat loy tuma, that now it's already absorbed tuma. So what's the difference if the tummy is going to touch it for the second time? It doesn't affect anything. Will you say no? Maybe now that the tummy touched it while it was in the klishares, now it's adding that the second pile becomes tummy. Amalei Abaya says, Umi Amrina Saveya like Tuma. Do you have this concept of that once something became tame, you can't put another tuma on it? Do you say such a thing? Well, Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah that you do say such a thing. Sadin tame, you have an interesting thing. You have a sadin. We're going to make a picture. Here's the picture. You have here a carpet, let's say, a red carpet, and a medrash lie down on it. So a guy who's a zav lie down without touching it, whatever. Then, so now the carpet becomes a avatuma. It could, if in avatuma means that it can be mitame, odom, and kalim, but only because a zav lies down on it. But if you decide to not use this more as a carpet and use it as a curtain, then it becomes a rishon l'tuma. A zav. This becomes a rishon tuma. It's no more a avatoma because it's not used for lying down. So that's the din. We learned sudden tame medras. We go on the Amid base. A carpet, let's say, is tame medras. If a zav lie down on it, it is tame. Vasa vilain, and then you turned it into a curtain. So then Torah min medras. It's not an avatoma anymore. Avatome magig medras. But it's now a rishon which could be metama food. But here's the key. Rabbi Yossi disagreed. Amar Rabbi Yossi, be'eza medrash nagav zeh. If all you have is a zav lie down on it, nothing. Then it was never a maga medrash. Ella, we're talking about over here that one zav lied down while it was on a carpet. Okay, then another zav came and touched it with his hands. Right? So now it was lie down and it was a tummy medrash, plus it was a tummy maga medrash. So if you make it not a medrash anymore by making it into a curtain, but the maga medrash it still remains because it's still something touched by a zav. So the Gemara says, okay, but when the second zav touched the carpet, it was already tummy a medrash. So how did he add anything to it? That's the question. When the zav touched it while it was a carpet, it's still tamei. Even if he touched it after a zav lie down on it. Amai, why is it tamei maga medrash? It should only be tamei medrash. Le mesava le tuma. Why don't we say that since it was a medrash first, then the magam, the guy that the zav that touches it later doesn't add anything to it? Amalei. So we said like this. Umai. How do you know that? The high shimnoga by a zav lebasa medrash. How do you know that the zav lie down first, and then another zav touched it? Dilma. Let's say mikame medrash. Maybe before somebody lie down on it, first a zav touched the carpet. Then somebody lie down on it. Oh, so first it was only a rishon l'tuma. Then another zav came and lie down on it. So then the second zav is adding something to that. So then you can say, since it's an addition, so then you can add something to it. To have a tuma chamura al tuma kala. You're adding a severity onto a light tuma. In my case, the idividi tuma kala light. But in our case, with the two piles, this pile was tamei before by tfil yoim before you put it into the klisharis, and now the tfil yoim touches it again. He's not adding any tuma to it, so it shouldn't work. It shouldn't add something to be mitama the other side. Ella says the Gemara Miseifa. We learn it from the second case in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yossi would agree. Vishnei sedinin hamukufalen umunochan zeh al zeh the yoshev zov aleim she'elyon tamei medrash va'tachton tamei medrash u'maga medrash. Let's say Rabbi Yossi would agree in the following case. This guy. You see in the picture. He's lying on two carpets. The top carpet is a medrash. The bottom carpet, which happens at the same time, is a medrash because the guy is lying on it. But it's also a maga medrash because it's touching carpet number one, which is a medrash. So it's touching, and itself is a medrash, and so it happened at the same time. Now, va'amai leimele savale tuma. Why don't we say it satiated the tuma? In other words, Rabbi Yossi would say that if you turn those two into a curtain, if you turn the bottom one into a curtain, it would be a rishain. But why? Why did you say it became a medrash, so it cannot become a manga medrash? Answers the Gemara, you're right, but hasa babasachas, it could have happened at one time. Something could become a medrash and a maga medrash at the same time. But hacha over here, in my case, is a very different. My case is you have two piles. One pile became tummy before you put it into the pot. Now you put it into the pan, right? And then you're going to have the same tame touch it again. He doesn't add anything to it. So maybe in that case, since he's not adding or it's not coming at the same time, therefore it's not going to be mitama this other pile. Just because you put it into a klisharis, the difference is it was tame before you put it into the klisharis. So the Gemara doesn't answer anything. Ama Rava, we're going to do just the first part of this. Ama Rava. Rava is the final story of this on this page, is a case like this. Here, I have three piles. You have the green pile, means you have an isarin. You need two piles over here, right? So let's say you have pile number one was never lost. That's a half a isarin, okay? But then pile number two was the original pile, but it got lost. Somehow it fell out. So we brought a replacement called pile number three. That's called the hifrish. But then we found pile number two. Okay, so now what's the din? You could only bring two of them. So pile number one was always there, never had a replacement. So all is good with pile number one. The question is, what's the din with pile number two and pile number three? So Amar Rava, Isaran Shechilku. You have an Isaran that was divided. And now you then you find the first one. Now, as you saw in the picture, you have three piles in the pot, in the pan. One is the original half of sarin. One was lost and you found it. and 1/2 Isarin was the replacement of the second one until you found it. Nitma avud. Let's say the middle pile that was lost and found became tamei. So which two become combined? So let's say if the middle pile became tamei, so according to Rava, only pile number 1 and pile number 2 are combined, become tamei. But pile number 3, since it was a replacement, but you found the original, so we ignore pile number 3. What happens if you touch pile number 3? So then pile number 3 is tamei and pile number 1 is tamei, because pile number 3 was a replacement for pile number 2. It could potentially be used. So then only pile number 3 and pile number 1 are tamei. Pile number 2 is not tamei, and pile number 2 is not tamei. And comes if you touch pile number 1, so then I'm not sure. That's what Rava says. Let's see what Rava says, and then we'll stop. Nitma Ovid, if the pile number 2 became tamei, Ovid, Virisha Mitzdarfin, only the first 2 piles are tamei, Mufresh Ein Mitzdarf. It's not part of the group. Nitma Mufresh, if the third pile became tamei, Mufresh Virisha Mitzdarfin, Ovid Ein Mitzdarfin. And only then the third pile and the first pile are tamei, not the second pile. But Nitma Rishon, but if the first pile, which was always in the pot, then Shneim Mitzdarfin, then both become tamei, because the number 1 could combine with number 2 or number 3. Which it's up to the kohen to decide which one is going to be he's going to view as the mincha. Abaya Ama, we're going to stop over here. Abaya Ama afila nitme echad mehem, even if one of them, any which one, you touch any which one, everything is tamei. Since it's right now undefined which 2 are you going to use, and they're all in the same pot, so therefore, even if you touch pile number 2 or pile number 3, all 3 are going to be tamei because they're all roommates. That's what Baya says. Afila nitma echad mehem shneim mitzdarfin. They both combine. My tama kula b'nei biksa dahadodi ninhu. They're all considered roommates, and that's why they all combine. Okay, we will take a break over here. So let's continue to the Mishnah. The same idea with the kamitza. What would it be? Kametz mina avid. If you do the kamitza from pile number 2, shiara v'rishon echolim, then what becomes the mincha? Pile number 1, and it's left, and the pile number 2 is leftovers. Mufraf, if you take the kamitza from pile number 3, einoi in that case, no, I'm sorry, when you take the kamitza from pile number 2, then you can't eat anything from pile number 3. Kamatz mina mufresh, but if you did the kamitza from pile number 3, shiav rishon echon, then 1 and 3 are eaten. Avud ein necha, pile number 2 is not eaten. Kamatz mina rishon, but if you did the kamitza from the first one, so now we don't know what the kohen had in mind to be his second half. We know if he did the kamitza on pile number 1, so he knows that this is for sure going to work, but we don't know which one he's choosing as his partner. Is it pile number 2 or pile number 3? So therefore, since you're not sure, shnei men in echon, you don't eat anything. Abaya Mama says, even if he took from any one of them, if he took from pile number 2, shnei men in echolim, you can't eat any of them, even if he took the kamitza from the third one. My tama kulina or the second one. My tama kulinami b'nei biksa dahadodininu, because they're all roommates, and therefore we don't know how they combine. So even if you took from pile number 2 or pile number 3, that's it. You can't eat. We don't know what's the remainder of the mincha that's permitted right after the kamitza. So the 2 questions are: Maskal or Papa? Papa asked on Rabaya, Vishirayim didei mi anacholim, but if he took from any one of the piles, so at least you know for sure he means to use that pile as part of the mincha. But there's a third of the komitz that's not being makro. Because if you're telling me that when he took, let's say, a scoopful from pile number 3, right? So you can tell me that he could eat from the remainder of pile number 3, but the kamitza, according to our understanding of the kohen, is that he meant to take a kamitza on behalf of all 3 piles. But you can't take a kamitza on behalf of all 3 piles because one pile is not part of the mincha. So he has a third of the kamitza that's he's doing it on behalf of something that's not part of the mincha. So that kamitza should not work. And maskef lora yitzchak bereder mashashia of a koim mitzkufa hechekarv. Even forget about eating the remainder of that pile that he took the kamitza from. The kamitza that's in his hand, how is he going to put on the mizbeach? 2/3 of it is good. 1/3 of it is on behalf of something that's not a mincha. There's a third of it that's chulin. So Rav Ashi says the answer is simple. A kohen did this. He knows that he's supposed to take a kamitza on behalf of just 2 of the piles, but then he did the service, and now we don't know what he had in mind, which 2 he had in mind. According to Rav Abaya, the komitz is decided which 2 he's going to pick. It's in the mind of the kohen. The kohen when he did the kamitza, he did it on behalf of 2 piles. It's just that we don't know which 2 piles he did it from. So according to Abaya, he could pick any 2. So therefore, for sure, the part that he did the kamitza, that's the part that you could eat. But we don't know if he picked that as his partner, any one of the 2. And since he could pick any one of the 2, all of them remain also. And that's how Abaya understands this case of the 3 piles. We'll begin with the Eretz Hashem tomorrow with the Mishnah on Daf Chaf Hey.